Awesome. All right, we're now live. Thanks everyone for joining us. We're going to give it a few more minutes to let people get onto the air, and we'll probably go live here about 3 to 4 minutes after the hour.
Perfect.
All right, I think we can get going here. Karen, want me to give it over to you and get us going?
Sure. I'd like to welcome everyone to our Rent Guarantee webinar today. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Karen Wong, and I'm Single Key's Content Marketing Manager. Today, we're going to introduce you to Single Key and then take you very briefly through our products and services, followed by a Rent Guarantee overview. And finally, we'll dive into your questions about the Rent Guarantee program. If you didn't submit your question beforehand, no problem. Just go ahead and chat via the webinar, and then we'll answer the questions as they come. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mackenzie Wilson, our Director of Customer Engagement and Experience. We're also joined today by our CEO, Willer Lykke. So Mackenzie?
Let's do it. Perfect. So we've got three main core products that we offer here through SingleKey. Our bread and butter, the one we're most known for, is our tenant screen service. It's a combination of a digital application as well as a comprehensive tenant report you get once they've completed the application. Probably I'd say the best out there. Typically on an average tenant, you'll get 3 to 4 pages of credit history alone. So it's very detailed. We also offer rent collection, and it's automated. So it's the same way that you'd pay a utility bill through a checking account with your provider. We do the same way for you to collect rent from your tenants, and your tenants don't have to do anything every month. So it's automated and it doesn't get forgotten. Lastly, the whole point of this webinar is our rent guarantee product. And as it says, it guarantees rent up to $60,000 or the first 12 months. And we'll get into the details of how this program works with Willer. Those are our three products.
Great. Thanks, Mac. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Great to meet everybody and look forward to kind of answering your questions. Just before we jump into the Q&A, just let me take a couple of minutes to kind of go over the intention of the rent guarantee program and how basically we built this to really support you, like small landlords out there, to take the risk out of renting, to be able to really kind of cover, yourselves and protect your rental income, which is critical, especially given when you're a small landlord, you're relying on that rental income to really cover your mortgage payments and property expenses and make sure that you can carry forward that asset without taking on any undue risk. And that's really kind of what drove us to bring this product to market and make it work alongside our tenant screening and rent collection tool to provide that peace of mind and security of rental income for the small landlords that we work with. Now, the rent guarantee, as Mac mentioned, it covers 3 primary kind of areas of risk. First of all, we cover up to 12 months of lost rental income in the event that tenants default on their rent payments and stop paying. You're covered for up to $5,000 a month or up to $60,000 in total over that 12-month period. And by the way, that 12-month period starts at any time the tenant defaults. So even if you signed up on month 11 of your lease, you're still covered for the next 12 months. It's not just the first 12 months of the lease term. So that's great. During that 12-month period, we're going to be working with you guys to really help remedy the situation and really kind of resolve the delinquency, try to get the tenant out, and basically make the unit vacant so that another tenant can move in and start paying the rent. If that process takes us 5, 6, 7 months or more, especially in Ontario, we'll keep paying the rent during that time. We'll hire a paralegal to help you with the legal process, and we'll cover their fees for up to $1,500, which is typically sufficient to help you kind of go through an eviction process. And then lastly, once the tenant's out of the property, if there's any damage left behind, we're able to cover up to $10,000 worth of property damage due to vandalism or malicious damage. And that's typically not covered by your homeowner's policy. It usually excludes vandalism by the occupant. So it's another great piece of coverage to provide some more peace of mind. And then lastly, this is a bit more of a less known fact, but we also have some vacancy protection. So if the tenant does all of a sudden vacate the property or move out without notifying you or giving you proper 60 days notice in Ontario, we do cover up to 30 days of 1 month of lost rental income to supplement typically the rent deposit that you have in place for that. So that's really kind of the risk management aspect of the rent guarantee. As part of this program, we also include free rent collection through our automated rent collection tool that we have available on the app, as well as 2 tenant reports as part of our rent guarantee. And the reason we do that is we want to encourage you guys to use these tools to A, screen tenants properly when they first apply, and then B, to also collect rent through our PAD system and to report those rent payments to the credit bureau to incentivize tenants to build their credit and to pay their rent on time so that they can improve their credit score over time. So that's my kind of quick overview of the rent guarantee program, and look forward now to jumping into questions and hope that myself, Mac, and Karen can answer most of them.
Perfect. Thank you, Willer. So our first question here is, how much does the rent guarantee cost?
Yeah, actually, we just answered that on the chat here, or on the kind of a chat box here. It's 5% of the annual rent or if the monthly rent guys. So if your rent is about, let's say $2,000 a month, you're looking at paying about $100 a month for the rent guarantee. Now this is a 12-month, contract bond. So typically we do have to kind of really pretty much guarantee the year, 12 months up front. So we typically pay the underwriter the entire 12 months up front. But then we also give the homeowner the option to break that payment down into 12 monthly payments. So if you like to pay annually, it'll be 5% flat. If you like to pay monthly, we can accommodate that. We just have to charge a bit more for the financing at 5.5%. So it'll be between $100 to $110 depending on the payment option.
Yeah, and to add on to what Viller said too, once you get past the first 12 months, because understandably a month-to-month lease can end at any time with the proper notice, we actually gear the rest of the program to match your tenancy. So it goes into a month-to-month payment after the first 12 months.
That's a good point, Max. So yeah, the commitment is only for the first 12 months. And then after your lease goes month to month, so does the rent guarantee. So if they give you a notice that they're moving out, you can terminate it any time after the initial 12-month term.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great. So moving on. Yeah.
Just a quick question on this. Svetlana, great question on the 3 months. It's a bit more difficult for us to do that, like a 3-month coverage, because it's a very short term. So oftentimes, it's not worth the effort of underwriting and screening and approving the tenant and setting everything up for just a 3-month guarantee. Plus, typically the term on the agreement is usually a 12-month term to mirror the initial term of the lease. So while we prefer 1-year leases, sometimes we made exceptions for shorter, like 8-month, for example, leases for students, or sometimes even 6-month leases that then go month to month. I think it would be difficult for us to approve a 3-month lease, though. No, Lena, good question on the fee there. Does the fee go up to 5.5% after the first 12 months? No, it doesn't. It actually stays the same. So even though you're going from paying 12 months up front for 5% in the initial term, and then we're getting you month to month, one of the benefits of committing to the upfront fee is that you then are grandfathered onto that fee, even as the guarantee goes month to month. So we don't increase to 5.5% after the initial term. But that's a good question.
Okay, I'll move on to the second submitted question here. It's also related to costs. So how much is the fee that we need to pay to Single Key for the rent guarantee program? I believe you already answered this, but anything else to add about costs or?
Yeah, there were some great questions here. I think that was a good one from Lena. Like, does the fee actually change from as the program grows from annual to monthly? No, it doesn't. It stays the same, which is great. I'm just looking at some of the questions that are relevant to the fees here on the chat. But we can always come back and kind of address all of these after we're done with the first 5 questions.
Definitely. We'll be answering all the questions in the chat in the order that they come. So
yeah. And let me take the one from Lucas here as well, Karen. So if the tenant does know what to do pre-authorized daily payments and then prefers e-transfer. All right, so if the tenant doesn't want to do the PAD payments, but prefers to do e-transfers or checks, do we simply short bank statements if they stop paying rent to begin the guarantee claim? Yeah, I think that's a great question. So Lucas, the PAD rent collection tool is completely optional. Like, you don't have to use our rent collection tool. In fact, you have to give tenants the option to choose how they prefer to pay. We recommend it because it's a more reliable collection method. And as you know, most property managers do rely on PAD systems to collect rent. And the nice thing about it is that it's set it and forget it. So the rent gets automatically pulled from the tenant's account and gets sent to yours on a monthly basis. But no, you don't have to use the PAD system to be in the rent guarantee program. You just need to kind of basically call us and let us know the tenant hasn't paid. Now, you don't have to present a bank statement either. What we'll do as part of our claim due diligence process is we'll actually try to basically confirm with the tenant to call and see if we get a different answer from them. If they're like, yeah, we paid, but they haven't. So that is part of the claim or demand adjudication process. No bank statements are required.
Great.
Karen, let me
great
back
questions.
to you. Yeah, just to finish
Okay.
on to the chat. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, lots of great questions. Question number 3 that was submitted. What are the minimum financial requirements for tenants to qualify for your rent guarantee?
Yeah, Mac, do you want to take that one?
Sure, let me get myself unmuted. Yeah, it's pretty simple. They need a job, and they have to have a rent to income ratio of 45% or less. So up to 45% of their income needs to match to the rent.
Yeah, that's the main requirement. It's just making sure that they have affordability, right? Like, are they going to be able to pay the rent? And you know, as you know, most landlords typically now go by the mantra of like, you know, your rent should only be a third of your household income. So we go 45% of your total pre-tax gross household income of all, you know, income sources combined. And by the way, that includes non-employment income, such as government credits or benefits. We'll add it all together to make sure that we can approve the applicant. And then lastly, we take a look at the credit check, right? So if there's no red flags like, you know, recent bankruptcies or recent evictions or legal items on the background check, which are rare, then we're able to go ahead and approve the tenant. But I would say, you know, with the current criteria, we're able to approve about 80% of the tenants that come our way, which is great.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great. Next question. Is there a minimum time required for the tenant to rent the property before we can make a claim? For example, tenant pays first last, but then stops paying rent.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's a good question, Karen. Actually, you know, there is only for one type of claim. So only for lease break claims, meaning that when the tenant basically breaks a lease and we cover like 1 month rent in that case, we have a 30-day kind of like waiting period on that, meaning that if they break the lease in the first 3 months, which, you know, the reason for this, guys, is that it actually happens a lot where, you know, a tenant rents the property online or remotely without even looking at it. And they show up to take possession and they're like, oh no, that's it, I don't want it. Or like, it wasn't sold as ever, you know, it doesn't look like I thought it looked online or whatever. So we have a lot of people kind of getting cold feet and then, you know, changing their mind before they even move in, really. So that 3-month freeze is only there to basically kind of do away with that, is before tenants move in. But for the regular rent guarantee, meaning that, hey, after they paid first and last, you know, and they stop paying on month 2, you're covered. You're covered for the next 12 months. And that's the entire, you know, point of this, is that, you know, this program wouldn't be very valuable if, you know, if we had a bit, you know, if we basically didn't start the coverage on month 2, because, you know, those bad actors or professional tenants that don't want to pay rent, they're just signing first and last to get in and intend on not paying at all. They'll stop paying as soon as month 2 comes around. So we do need to be able to kind of provide that coverage right away, and we do on the rent guarantee as well as on the damage claim side.
Great.
Yeah.
Next question. I've read negative reviews online that Single Key does not honor the rental income guarantee when tenants stop paying rent. Can you provide a figure of how many rent loss claims are denied?
Yeah, and Mac, feel free to jump on this as well. But we, you know, I love to address this question because it's not often that we get to kind of go, you know, basically kind of jump in on those online conversations and then kind of like really tell our side of the story. But, you know, it is the nature of the business that, you know, it's the folks that get denied that really are the most vocal out there, right? So if for whatever reason they don't get paid, they're the ones that take to the Facebook groups or Reddit or whatever to really kind of like, you know, kind of really kind of push their case forward. Truthfully, is that we're dealing with tens of kind of delinquencies on a monthly basis. You know, we're anywhere from 10, 15, or 20 on a monthly basis. Most of them do get denied. Most of them do get approved. Over 95 of demands or claims that come our way, we are able to approve. And we've done a really good job, I'd say, over the past 3 years now to really fine tune our kind of qualification and approval criteria on the agreement itself, so that it's very straightforward. It's just relatively black and white in terms of what is and is, you know, what is and isn't covered, and which types of tenants qualify or don't qualify. Mm-hmm. You know, this is something that I think we're getting a lot better at as well, Mac, because, you know, in the beginning when we first brought this product to market, you know, 2018, 2019. It was a bit of a work in progress. And I think, you know, where I think we saw a lot of claims being denied is when landlords didn't necessarily collect the right documents up front. They didn't get the credit report, they didn't get the proof of income from tenants. And then when the claim came in, they didn't have the qualification docs. So what we've done over the past 3 or 4 years, guys, is that we've actually made sure now that we collect all the documents up front, and then somebody from our team will actually review, approve, and make sure that those documents are accurate, so that there's no surprises when it's time to actually put in a demand for the program. And that's really done a great job of actually reducing our kind of denial or claims that get denied as time goes on. We're on your side. At the end of the day, we work with obviously with Lloyd's and under kind of a reinsurance company. So we try to go to bat and push for every claim to get paid out. But they do have specific criteria and document requirements that they need in order to be able to pay out on the claim. So as a team, we're doing a much better job now of making sure that you got all the documents in place and on hand before you even sign up for the program, so that you can never get turned away.
Yeah.
And then lastly, and I'll pass it on to you, Mac, as well to add on more. But lastly, I would say the only reason, a claim, basically, if the tenants don't pay rent, it's pretty black and white. There's not a lot of reasons for tenants to justify not paying rent. It doesn't matter if there's maintenance issues, if there's arguments with the landlord or whatever, you still got to pay rent, right, to be able to live there. So, like I said, 95% of claims are pretty, clear, and we're able to approve. The only cases where we do get in trouble is either, the landlord did zero kind of due diligence and kind of flipped the policy our way, and somehow they got through our approval process and they didn't have the right qualification docs. Tenant didn't have a job, or they didn't have any, they had issues with their credit. The second one is if the landlord acts in bad faith or gets in the way of us trying to remedy the situation, right? So, for example, if you're not allowing us to get the tenant out, if the tenant is, for example, and this is an example I bring up because it happened to us recently, where the tenant lost her job, calls the landlord and says, "Hey, I lost my job. I need to move back with my parents. I can't pay," right? And she had the truck booked. She was ready to go. And we called the landlord and said, "Look, let her go because it'll be easy. We're in a hot market now. It'll be easy to fill that vacancy and get a new tenant in there. We'll even cover the 1 month rent as part of our lease break coverage. So you'll have time to bring somebody in there. Plus you've got your first and last on hand. So you'll be fine." But the landlord was just really against it. They're like, "No, because they moved in, they painted the property. Now I'm going to have to look for another tenant. She just moved in 3 months ago. This sucks. You guys have to deal with it," right? And he basically bullied her into staying into the property. And what happened? Well, the tenant stayed and didn't pay. And we're like, "Sorry, we're going to cover 1 month's rent, but the rest is out of scope because you really got into the way."
You made the problem worse.
Yeah, and you have a responsibility to really mitigate losses and kind of work with us to resolve these situations, because it's much easier to fix a lease break than it is to fix, an 8-month delinquency, especially given how lengthy some of these conversations or processes with the landlord-tenant board are now. So I would say those are the only rare cases where we do run into trouble, is if the application docs haven't been kind of approved or kind of somehow got through our approval process. Ultimately, it is the homeowner's responsibility to make sure that they do have the right docs on hand, like the credit report and proof of income, to be able to qualify. And if the landlord act in bad faith or get in the way of a resolution, or are taking steps, or the unit isn't uninhabitable, right? If you turn off the heat, or you turn off the power, or you lock the doors, change the locks, those are things you can't really do. You have to follow the legal process. Otherwise, it causes issues.
Yeah. So to quickly wrap up on Villar's detailed explanation is, if you're in breach of the RTA, the Residential Tenancy Act, again, we can't underrate when you're breaking the law. So let's take on the next question.
And before we move on quickly, Karen, so Yangshan, great question. What kind of documents are needed? Just 2 documents. We need a credit report, a recent credit report, and we need proof of income. So that could be a pay stub, employment letter, a tax form, like a recent tax form. Ideally, showing the amounts, showing the dates, showing the name of the applicant. And we have very specific kind of guidelines on that during the sign-up process. Ashley, is a moving checklist a requirement for the rent guarantee program? It's not. It only comes in very handy when you make a damage claim, because then you can show that, hey, look, everything was in good. The tenant signed off that the unit was in good standing before they moved in. And then when they moved out, there was damage and this and that. It helps. It makes it very easy for us to then kind of basically approve a damage claim if there is a move in and move out checklist, and if there's photos of the property before the tenant moves in. So I always recommend take photos of the entire unit before tenant moves in. So if there is any damage, it's very easy to document and prove.
Yeah. And just to quickly add on to that, there's differences between the provinces. So I'm making the assumption that most of our audience are Ontario based. We also have a lot in BC and Alberta. In Alberta, for example, you can't make a claim against a damage deposit without having to move in, check a condition report or inspection. That really states the condition of the property prior to the tenant taking possession. and it makes it quite a bit more difficult to go after damages if we don't know if they're pre-existing or not.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
damages are subjective, so we need a order or a result from the provincial landlord-tenant board as well.
Yeah, that's an important point that Mac is making there, is that, you know, it's challenging to determine the amount of damages to the property without kind of going to small claims court or going to the LTB and getting basically a court order, because the judge will basically kind of do their math to figure out, hey, what is the depreciation value of the asset? You know, if they destroyed, let's say, this appliance or this piece of furniture, well, what was the residual value of that furniture if you've had it for 5 years and there's wear and tear on it? So we rely, yeah, exactly. We rely on their kind of like estimation or determination of the damages or cost of damages, and then we basically go based on that to be able to actually pay out on the demand. So, and typically this is something that, you know, you do that as you're going through your kind of eviction process at the LTB, you would bring up damages as well and try to get a judgment for those as well while you're there, and we pay out based on that amount. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll take. Yeah,
I'll take
ahead,
any more
Matt.
live questions because we'll knock through these, and then we've got a whole queue of people been waiting patiently for the questions. So I'm going to keep you on track here, Billy.
We've just got one more submitted question, and yes, we'll go through the queue. So last question, the tenant pays the rent on time for the past 2 years. I'm planning to move back to the house next year. Can I join in your rent guarantee program before submitting the notice to the tenants? I'm not sure what will happen when they receive the notice.
So this is a kind of bit of a corner case. So the landlord wants to move back to the house. Can I join the rent guarantee before submitting the notice to the tenants? I mean, I would say in this case, I'm not sure why you'd want to do this. I'd have to think about this one because I haven't really come across it before. You know, I can say though that typically this would be a mid-lease application, meaning that it would be a tenant that is not a new tenant that's applying for a lease. It's somebody that's already on the lease. Now, we typically can approve those tenants as well, or those types of tenancies as well, mid-lease tenancies. The only requirement is that we need to make sure the tenant hasn't already stopped paying rent, right? So we do typically ask for at least 6 months of rent payment history before approving a tenant that's already on the lease. And, you know, the reason is very obvious, right? You can't really get car insurance after the accident. So we want to make sure that the tenant hasn't already stopped paying rent before you sign up for the rent guarantee. Yeah. Perfect.
Great.
Okay.
Let's move on to the other questions then.
Okay, so live questions, and Chantal, she's already on top of it. Perfect. What are my options if I rent by the room? That's a good question. Phil, I think it'd be treated the same as a full tenant property.
Yeah, it is. There is a small kind of like provision for this case, guys, in the agreement that says that, hey, if you're rooming out the house, make sure that, you know, the guarantee is on a per lease basis, not a per room basis. So if you've got 3 roommates kind of like sharing a lease, you need to guarantee the entire lease. You can't do it room by room. That's the only requirement, and it just makes it makes the process a lot easier from our end to be able to kind of underwrite the risk and also cover any damages there. Plus, it gives us the ability to go after all 3 tenants if they stop paying, which is great. So that's the only requirement. Your rooming is no problem. We try to basically guarantee it on a per lease basis. So if these guys are sharing the same space, sharing the same unit, sharing the same common elements, try to get them all in the same lease because it becomes a lot easier to. Yeah.
You can imagine the difficulty of he said, she said situations if we're only guaranteeing a portion of 3 renters with common spaces. So, okay, next question. If I have a paralegal, can I use yours for a second opinion?
Of course. Yeah.
No, why not?
You know what I was going to say? What I was going to say, Mag, is that, you know, as part of our rent guarantee program, you guys know that we cover up to $1,500 in paralegal fees to help resolve the delinquency or the situation you have. Now, you don't actually have to use our paralegals. We have some great partners in every province that we work with on a monthly basis, and they've got a lot of experience. They have a great track record. But if you have an existing paralegal that you have a relationship with, you're free to use them as well, and we're happy to cover their fees instead as well. In terms of using us as a second opinion, I would say we're not really a paralegal shop. So what we'll do is we'll refer you to one of the paralegals we work with, and you're free to work with them. But if you're in our rent guarantee program, we will cover the fees for the paralegal work, which is great. Yeah, that's 30 days. So how long is the period for the vacancy insurance cover? You're covered for up to 30 days on top of your last month's rent. So if you have a last month's rent deposit, you get that plus an added 30 days, which gives you about 60 days total to really find a new tenant, which is great. And usually this applies if the tenant hasn't given you proper notice. If the tenant has given you proper notice that, hey, I'm moving out in 2 months, then it's on you to really, you do have sufficient time to really kind of do the work and find a new tenant. We understand that sometimes tenants can get in the way of that and make it easy for you to kind of, clean up the unit and kind of make it ready to lease out again. But the way that the lease break lease break coverage is intended is to protect those landlords that don't get notified by the landlord. They just take off overnight, and now they have to scramble to find somebody else, and as a result, they suffer some vacancy rent losses.
Perfect. Next question. Can there be delays in receiving the rent by using direct debit? So pre-authorized debit. Yes.
Yeah, and this is something that we're actually actively working now. By September, by next month, we are on track to reduce our rent collection period down to 3 days. I don't want to overpromise that, but there will be announcement.
3 business days.
3 business days, which is great. Currently, it's set up as 5 business days is our SLA on completing a rent collection, and that's just a factor of the Canadian payment system. It's the same amount of time it takes you to clear your check at the bank if they don't pre-fund it. And because we're doing millions of dollars of rent collection transactions, we can't pre-fund them. We can't basically front the money to the homeowner because it would be a huge kind of a cash flow hit. So it currently takes about 5 business days. I know that can be annoying because sometimes especially if it's a long weekend, like we did, like it was on August 1st, it'll kind of basically now go over the second week. It can take up to 7 days, right, with the weekends in between. So that's why we're working hard now to bring it down to 3 days so that we can kind of clear them much faster and usually within the same week, which is great.
Yeah, and like Villa said, just to highlight again, it's just a dependency of the financial system we're in. If you're like our southern neighbors in the U.S., they're in a completely different system. It's much faster. So hopefully our regulatory bodies will get us there. If you purchase a rent guarantee, will you get reimbursed for the tenant screening report?
Yeah, you will get reimbursed for 2 tenant screening reports with the rent guarantee program, and that's what we encourage landlords to do is run the reports, pay for them or have the tenant pay for them, and then once you decide to upgrade to the rent guarantee, we can just go ahead and refund it directly to the credit card. Yeah,
perfect. What if I use e-transfer? Do I just show my bank statements? So I think this is for proof of rent payment by the tenants if they're already existing.
Yeah, we covered this. It will be part of our due diligence process, so you don't have to use our rent collection tool. You can collect your own rent and still be able to make a claim for non-payment. Now, typically, it'll be pretty easy for us to figure out if the tenant hasn't paid or not. So, the first thing we do is we'll pick up the phone, have a conversation with you, have a conversation with the tenant, understand kind of what's going on. And unless the tenant, it really insists that they've paid the rent, which usually they don't, then we might ask for bank statements, but in most cases, it is pretty straightforward. And at the end of the day, the way, and I'll take a minute if you guys don't mind, to kind of just explain a bit how the demand process typically works for us, right? So if you call us and alert us that the tenant hasn't paid, we'll spend a couple of days really trying to get on the phone with them to investigate the demand and to kind of, to get both sides of the story. If we don't hear back from the tenant or we don't hear any basically we don't, and typically that's what will happen. If tenants are trying to skip on a rent, that they won't answer or they'll make up excuses. In which case, after the end of the first week, we will then issue an N4. So after a few days, we issue the N4, the eviction notice for the tenants to start the eviction proceedings. They'll have 14 days now to actually pay back the rent. Oftentimes we get paid. So like I'd say about 50% of the times tenants will, be scared from that notice and typically will respond by actually paying out on their rent. If they don't, if that 14-day period expires, that's when we then issue an L1 or go for basically file for an eviction hearing with the landlord and tenant board. And that's when we basically then start the payouts to the landlord as well, meaning that, hey, we gave tenant notice, they had 14 days, they didn't pay. During that time, we also try to call and collect if we can. And if that didn't work, now we actually proceed to the eviction hearing and then start reimbursing the landlord for their lost rental income. And now during that time, if before the again, we'll try to work hard to resolve or remedy the situation with both the landlord and the tenant. If the tenants decide to go on a payment plan and start actually making payments and catching up on that lost rental income, we could potentially kind of basically not have to take it to an eviction hearing, but in most cases, it'll go to the eviction hearing. We will attend that hearing with our paralegal there to help you kind of navigate that and achieve a successful outcome. And then once we do get the eviction order, we then follow up with the sheriff and typically cover the bailiff fees or the sheriff fees as well to go out there and change the locks and get the tenant out. And if that process takes 6, 7, 8, 9 months, we'll keep paying the rent all the way until the tenant has been removed from the property. And typically we'll even cover 1 more month at the end of that to give you time to find a new tenant and to turn over the units, clean it up, put it back on the market and find a new tenant. So you're covered for the full length of the delinquency, plus an additional 30 days after to give you time to bring it back to market.
Okay, let's take the next question. What is a PD payment system? I'll probably pre-authorized debit, I'm assuming. So it's our standard payment system we have here in Canada. It's again the same way that you pay a utility bill of a checking account.
Yeah, I just put in a link here in the chat so you can take a look at our webpage here. TransUnion or Equifax support. Currently we use Equifax, but we will be bringing TransUnion as an option as well. I'll look out for that this fall. It's coming September, October. Yeah, that's a great question. And I think Rahul answered that or asked that question. Rahul, the whole point of this program is to really cover events like this, right? Tenant moves in, everything looks good, and then life happens. They lose their job or maybe there's a breakup or divorce or something along the way that basically forces one of the tenants out. Now they can no longer pay the rent. That's exactly what the rent guarantees was intended for, is to cover these types of events. So yeah, if the tenant's employment changes mid-lease, you're absolutely covered. We're only looking at the employment requirement at the very beginning of the lease. And if that changes throughout the lease, your claim will be approved. Yeah. Are tenants notified with the rent guarantee? Typically, you can notify your tenants about the rent guarantee. We have no issue with that, but you don't have to, is the other point, is that typically the rent guarantee is signed between the homeowner or the landlord and Single Key. The tenant is not a party to that agreement, meaning that they don't really have to consent or sign or be aware of the rent guarantee if they don't have to. I do get this question a lot. People are like, well, if the tenant finds out that my rent is guaranteed, they're more likely to stop paying the rent. And I would say that's not the case, right? Because they're going to pay the rent because they need a roof over their head. And whether the rent is guaranteed or not, we're still going to proceed with an eviction process if they stop paying. So it doesn't make a difference if the tenants are aware or not.
Awesome. Do damages need to be submitted to the LTB before you will cover? So we kind of already covered this. I can take this one, Viller. But yes, and this is across any provincial jurisdiction. It does vary by province. Damages are subjective. Wear and tear, depreciation on, say, the age of average lifespan of a flooring will be taken in consideration. And because they are such subjective, we need a hearing result to provide a claim number on for you or a value. So yes. Since I rent by room, my owner occupied home, am I able to deny a tenant that may not be a good fit for me to live with? With rent guarantee, when you help fill a space of Single Key finds a tenant, if they feel is a good fit, can I still deny them?
Yeah, I think, Svetlana, that's a good question. I think at the end of the day for us, we don't want to take away your ability as a landlord to approve or deny your tenants. So, for us, and again, to make sure that we have an inclusive and kind of non-discriminatory approach to guaranteeing rent, the only requirements that we have on the rent guarantee program are financial requirements. So we just want to make sure that, hey, the tenant has enough income to cover the rent, and there's no red flags on the credit report that indicate a delinquent payment behavior in the past. So as long as the credit report checks out and the income is sufficient, we automatically approve them. We do not kind of go case by case in that case, but that doesn't mean that you can't, right? So if you have preferences for which tenants you want to approve, and obviously we want to rely on your judgment as an experienced landlord to kind of figure out which tenant's going to be a good fit or not. But we're not going to limit your options in which tenants you want to approve just so that you can qualify for the rent guarantee. Our approval process is pretty black and white, and as long as they meet our criteria, you then have the choice to select whichever tenant you prefer.
Perfect. Next question. All right. Rahul, how does it work for non-legal two-dwelling units? Does the rent guarantee cover non-payment of utilities where the landlord pays the utilities initially, but they get their share from the tenants later? I'll take a run at this and fill me in if I miss anything. It's really dependent on what's contracted in your lease. If you've got in your lease an addendum or section laid out how utilities are paid, then it's contracted, and then we can cover that with the rent guarantee. If you somehow manage your utilities completely separate and they're removed from your lease and they're not covered in your lease agreement, then we don't have the ability to cover that. It has to be contracted within your lease.
Yeah, and that's a question we get a lot, right? Do you guys cover utilities? I think that the easy answer is if you include utilities as part of rent, then yes, they will be guaranteed under the rent guarantee. It is a rent guarantee; it's not a utility guarantee. So if the utilities are extra on top of the rent, then we can't cover them.
Okay, next one. Assuming fees paid for the program can be used at tax time as an expense, you provide complete invoices for the year to have it filled on file for an audit.
Yeah, we do, Justine, and also what we find a lot of what we're doing now is that we're also allowing landlords to pay through bank account. I know we have a lot of folks that like to actually kind of keep expenses together. So like, hey, I all my rent income for this property goes into this bank account, and I also want all my expenses to come out of the bank account so that it's easy to kind of reconcile during tax time. So if you want to pay with your bank account, you can pay with debit card, you can pay through PAD or direct bank transfers as well. So we try to accommodate to make your tax season easy for you guys when it comes to it. Yeah.
So a question from Justine: I had a terrible tenant previously, so has not made any payments as decided by the LTB. If this situation were to occur, Single Key has covered the rent, due arrear payments, or attempts to collect are the responsibility of Single Key.
Sorry, okay.
Or the rent, due arrear payments or attempts to collect rent are the responsibility of Single Key. So I think I need to understand a bit more about this case, just because the question is not very clear. Not made payments as decided by the LTB. I'd have to understand why the LTB decided that the tenant doesn't have to pay rent, because that's pretty unusual. So Justine, feel free to send me a note afterwards to kind of just explain it in a bit more detail, or happy to jump on a quick call with myself or somebody from our team to get into it.
A question I want to circle back to that non-conforming or illegal suite. Again, our program has to operate within the confines of the law. So if there's a component that is in breach of the RTA in your province, that's something that we cannot protect against. So if just something to keep in mind. Sorry, the LTB decided the tenant should pay, but she has not made any payments. We'll connect after. Sorry, maybe she's talking about there's a payment plan in place.
Exactly. This happens often, Max. We go to the board and they're like, oh yeah, like let's put together a payment plan. Then the tenant doesn't follow through with it. Yeah, in this case, Justine, you are covered through it. So, and again, like we have a 12-month kind of like max coverage for that reason. Sometimes it do kind of take forever, but it's rare. And I would say probably over 95% of cases we're able to solve within that 12-month period. So, but yeah, if the tenant basically gets an order to be put on a payment plan by the LTB, then they don't follow through with it, you're still covered even after the eviction order or after the LTB appointment for a maximum of up to 12 months. Yeah.
Well, and can we go back to that question for a second? I want to add something else to it. Yeah, it's called a condition. This is called like a conditional eviction, meaning that they have to abide by certain conditions to keep their residency. And if they breach any of that, then the eviction will be followed through. So yeah, same thing. If they don't meet the conditions, then you can activate our program.
Yeah, and the good news here is that if they don't follow through on those conditions, it's much easier and faster to get them out the second time around. So that's a bonus. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, what happens if a tenant provides a fake income, but his credit report sounds good? Go ahead.
Yeah. No, this is a big topic now, Young Shane. Thanks for that great question, because we're seeing a lot of this in the market, and we're actively, obviously as a tenant screener, first and foremost, we're actively working hard to kind of come up with solutions to solve this. We will actually be releasing a new version of the app in September now that will have a lot of improvements to basically kind of do some deeper due diligence on the I guess, authenticity or accuracy of the income documents. My suggestion for the landlord, though, when enrolling to the rent guarantee program, is do the best you can to collect, clear, legible pay stubs or employment letters, and typically ask for multiple pay stubs or bank statements if you just so that you can have some. It becomes more difficult for folks to kind of modify or fake those documents if you're asking for multiple copies. We do a bit of that work on our end as well, and we catch these all the time. We find folks that submit fake documents, and usually they're pretty, pretty obvious. And now we're also starting to actually make some reference calls. So sometimes we will call it, like if we're not sure that if the employment checks out, we'll start making calls to the employer to verify that income, to do a second level of due diligence. And in the future, we're actually looking at additional solutions like bank scans, where we'll have a tenant log in with their bank account. We'll take a quick snapshot of their 12-month history to verify that the income from the employment is coming into their bank account. But we haven't implemented that yet, so that might be a bit higher friction. So yeah, to summarize is try your best to verify the docs are legitimate and all the information is there. And we will try to do our best on our end as well to kind of verify. But ultimately, if we don't catch it, not your fault, we'll still pay out.
Do we have a next question? So Justine, Sandra, does Single Key verify tenants' eviction history? If yes, how?
Yeah,
I can. I'll take this and then Villa tie me in. So our job as a tenant screen service is to provide all the tools to use the landlords to make the most informed decision as possible. We definitely have an online database search component to our credit report, but there is some nuances to that depending on if you're in your local jurisdiction, if they've actually made those databases available online. For example, I'm in Alberta. We use the RTDRS for dispute resolution between landlords and tenants, and that information isn't currently available online. So therefore, we don't have the ability to add it to a report. If we could, we certainly would. So it's that onus would be on you to verify the eviction history.
Yeah, I mean, and I think there's not much you can do here, right? You're limited by what documents are publicly available, to your point, Max. So like if you're in BC, for example, you have more access to kind of like court records. In Ontario, you have access to CANLI, but even CANLI is not fully comprehensive. I think they only have about 20 or 30% of the actual court records out there. So
Yeah.
that's what we do. We try to go out and look through all the, search through all the kind of like publicly available records in the province that you're in. And if we do find something, we'll obviously pull it into the report and notify you. But this is not this is basically our eviction requirement on the rent guarantee is only if it appears on the credit check. So if it does show up on our credit and background check that the tenant's been evicted in the past 3 years, we then have the right to kind of disqualify or deny that that tenant or applicant. Otherwise, we understand that you're limited by what's available. Yeah.
Okay. Got a few more minutes here before the top of the hour, but Justine's got a few more questions. Okay, perfect. After the initial lease term is over, does Single Key rent guarantee automatically renew until the tenant moves out, or do we get a notice asking if we'd like to continue with the program? So we did quickly cover this at the beginning of the show, but just quickly again, we require a 12-month commitment up front, just the way it works with our underwriter. After that point, it switches over to a month-to-month payment, and it will just match until your tenant is giving you notice that they're moving out. And then at that time, you give us notice that you're terminating the contract, and we'll end it as such.
Great. So that is the last question. I wanted to say thank you so much for everyone for joining today. Viller, Mackenzie, thank you so much for the great conversation. We'll be following up with an email for ways to get in touch with us directly for more questions, and if we can help you answer anything else about the rent guarantee program. So with that, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. Great meeting everybody, and look forward to kind of getting in touch after the call. And I'm going to quickly plug in our awesome sales team here as well, guys. If you have any questions or need more information on the rent guarantee, reach out to Hannah, Alex, or Eric on our sales team. If you go to the rent guarantee page, you can book a call with them directly right there. And we'll try to hold these events on a monthly basis because we're seeing a lot of interest and a lot of questions here. So I will notify you when the next one is coming up, and feel free to join us then again.
Yeah, and folks, for everyone that's been intense and has registered for this webinar, we'll have a follow-up email, and I believe we can include a copy or a link to this recording as well.
Absolutely. Great.
Thanks,
Thank you
Mary.
so much, everyone. Thank you.